Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, playing college sports in the NIL era. Good work if you can get it. We're into it next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks for making us your first listen with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again, and there's no telling what today might bring, because if you're following along with our timeline yesterday following our conversation, which was pretty portal intense, I guess you should say, we focused in a lot on what was happening on a basketball front and what could be next to come for the Red Raiders. Of course, always a very fluid situation as you roll through any day or any week. But on the other side of that, and us speculating about one particular individual, well, that particular individual made some news across the nation. And that was great Osibor, who winds up a Washington Husky. That wasn't so much, I guess, the news that got the reaction, but it was the report of $2 million worth of NIL greenbacks being involved in the capturing of said basketball player. And we'll get into some of the reaction here today with you. Coming up, what's next for Texas Tech as far as their moves moving forward, and also a timetable to be aware of as to how this could stretch out, obviously, even further as we get into some NBA draft considerations and other things that guys out there as far as targets go have to consider. But it's always fun, Chris. I do enjoy, I mean that literally, I enjoy seeing the reaction, because it typically kind of runs the gamut when it comes to any type of NIL news, because some people are shocked, appalled, and repulsed by it. Some are embracing it. I see a lot of folks just saying, hey, I may be disgusted by it, but good for the kid if you can take advantage of it, get it while the getting is good. But that was definitely kind of the spectrum yesterday, seeing a wide range of reaction to that news.
I mean, if you want to pay me $2 million to live in Seattle and hoop, I mean, I'd watch The Wizard of Oz on loop during the off season, man. I mean, I got
bars.
I mean, I got no problem with that. I would take the good with the bad there. Just to go back to yesterday, but so over the weekend, I was told Osibor to Louisville for $2 million. I kind of didn't believe the number. I'm like, because that's just so far out there, and maybe it's not. I have no way of comparing. And it sounds like what exactly what happened is the number was right, but that Washington just matched it. And I would here's what I really like to know. I think he really wanted to go to Washington all along with Danny Sprinkle, his previous head coach that's now the head coach at Washington, so they stay together. But boy, wouldn't you love to know what Jed Fish, the new football coach up at University of Washington, it thinks about that? Like, okay, boy, we must be sitting on a mountain.
Right.
Like where's mine? I need some dudes too. Because I'm uncomfortable, and a lot of people want this, and if you get it widespread, it's one thing, but when it's isolated like this, I'm a bit uncomfortable with the number being leaked or being out there or being reported. This was Jonathan Giovni, I think is how you say it, for ESPN.
Yeah.
Does a lot. He's got an Italian last name. I don't want to. I probably screwed up his last name like we've been doing with Osibor, which I think now that is the correct way to say it.
Yeah, we'll get it right now that he's no longer in the picture.
Yeah, he's not an option. Yeah, finally learned it. And but I mean, so it's reported, and it's funny because I think there was other portal entries out there going highest paid, huh? Like, okay, making you think that, okay, well, they're getting more than $2 million. Who knows? But with that, boy, that is if I'm the kid, if I'm his coach, if I'm whatever, I don't think you would want that out there because it leads to, extra pressure. It leads to, a lot of potential for, jealousy within the locker room. And think about how the media will handle and write about Asabor now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you, and it's all fair, really. I mean, it's like, okay, this kid got 8 and 8 tonight. I mean, what are we doing? What a waste of money. How much money could you have spread that out on? And that's what I think it's a whole separate conversation to have. Is like everybody can spend their NIL money how they want, and businesses or collectives can choose to divvy it up, and a coach can kind of say, let's not do it this way. Let's spread it out. Let's go with this approach, or let's go big ticket item approach. However you want to do it, it's up to, the NFL has a salary cap. Dallas Cowboys, they don't want to. It's pretty clear they don't want to allot just so much to their quarterback that hadn't won much in the playoffs. They've got other stars to pay. You need depth. I mean, there's different, philosophies there on how to do it. And so this is kind of part of the dynamic as it relates to a college basketball roster. But I mean, that's a lot of money tied up into one player, Cowan. And short of, I mean, you tell me, conference championship, he's got to be player of the year. Does he got to be first team all, like all league and the what would be, I guess, the Big Ten? I mean, what justifies that price tag if you're the folks paying that? Like, it's got to be at least a Final Four appearance. I mean, what are we talking? Or is it just like, hey man, we'll just kind of roll the dice here and see what happens? I mean, it's just that's a big number.
I was kind of thinking like, yeah, at least Final Four, and then probably captaining the first manned mission to Mars with the Washington Huskies logo on the side of the spaceship, or something along those lines might justify $2 million. I don't know what kind of ceiling you'd have to be talking about to ever actually justify that kind of thing. And I'm glad you brought the other part up, because I did want to ask you how you felt about these numbers being public, because obviously in a professional sense, we see these things all the time. And for the most part, not that every fan, cares enough to be all that aware of what this guy's getting paid or that guy's getting paid. But whenever I see it reported nationally and it becomes there for public consumption, it's kind of a new experience for us in the college realm. But I was asking myself, like, should we know what all these guys are making? I'm really kind of conflicted. I'm not so sure how I feel about that. But do you think that it should be out there for public consumption more consistently? Do you think that it should always be kind of kept in the shadows, maybe like it's always been within college sports? Or how did you feel about that angle in particular? First, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else, and it does it all while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within only 24 hours. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today. Terms and conditions apply. How did you feel about that angle in particular?
Well, I think a lot of people do want it. A lot of people are pushing for it because I think that there's a lot of bidding against yourself or misinformation out there, and you're kind of blind in a lot of it. And I think that's what I think the collectives in some ways would prefer it be transparent, so they know, okay, we've been getting hosed all this time. The going rate is not this. We've been way overpaying. However you want to phrase this or look at it. And I think that a lot of the in-house discussion is that it would be like, brought in-house or that deals need to be made public and all that. And that's that's fairly normal in a lot of walks of life. You know, I mean, every professional athlete's salary is pretty much, you know, I mean, everybody knows it. It's easily to look up. There's websites just dedicated to salary caps and salaries and roster management as it relates to the money and all those things. This is kind of no different. And I think that, you know, I mean, the Matador Club has been very upfront about, hey, we have a base program. Everybody in our football program, 120 deep or 110 deep or whatever the number is, they get this much as a base, you know, as a base commitment from us. And in some ways, you kind of want that public because it's an attraction. You know, they did the same thing with the Lady Raiders, and then, you know, on and on it went with the different programs on the base program on what you could get. I mean, it had press conferences as it relates to some of this stuff, but some of these individual ones, because what you get into is, you know, let's just, the hypothetical is that the tricky part for a coach is to manage the chemistry of a locker room and the whole culture thing. And when you find out that your teammate that's not playing very well lately is making this, and you're just making that, and you're kind of carrying it, it just leads to problems, or it certainly can. Not in every case, but that's the tricky part, where that's part of why you kind of like it, that it's shrouded in secrecy in some ways. But I think players talk, agents talk. You know, you don't know whether you're getting the accurate info or not, because is this gamesmanship? Is this leverage? Am I negotiating? Wink, wink. You know, kind of, you know, overplaying my hand. Who knows? But I think there's a lot of push to have a lot of this made public, because the folks that are writing the checks would prefer it to be transparent, because the guardrails in place, because it saves you from bidding against yourself in some ways. Now, you may never get what somebody offered to be transparent, okay? But you can create a scale when you see this dude averaged this, he rebounded this much, he played in this league. That's kind of what this is worth. And you could start to ballpark like what things are worth, what size is worth, what experience is worth, all those things. And I think that's kind of what would be beneficial. But there's some negative consequences to that too.
Well, that's another question I had. Like, do you think that this impacts, as it would in a professional sense, whenever a quarterback, say gets a new contract and it's the biggest ever, it's like, okay, well, here's the new market now. And every other quarterback is thinking, oh, I'm happy for that guy, because now I'm going to be happy for me as well whenever it comes time to negotiate a contract. In a college sense, do you think that I kind of have a feeling that this is just more of a one-off, and there are more people like, God, Washington's insane, or like, this player must be a hell of a negotiator, but it's not necessarily going to bleed to like other comparable players and be like, all right, well, now it's a $2 million market. Or do you think that maybe it's a little bit more similar to kind of setting the market like you would in a professional context?
I think what is interesting here is that Great Osabor, I think, is a really good player. Okay. I don't think he's a National Player of the Year candidate. I don't know if he's going to be like a all Big Ten first team guy. I just think he's a really good player. I think what he benefited from is that there's not just a ton left out there. I think he benefited from the timing of the cycle, that he's kind of one of, some what you would feel like are kind of guaranteed type to be good players. And you're late in the cycle. And so he benefits from that. And so I think that, in some of these, and we'll get into the next phase of our conversation, because the next wave of, it's not portal entries, but the next wave of available candidates here, I guess is the best way to phrase that, is because what you have right now is, okay, so we talked a lot yesterday about JT Toppen. I'd be willing to bet you he's going to sign a pretty hefty NIL deal, and my guess is going to be it's going to be with Texas. Okay, but that's if he does pull out of the NBA draft. Okay, And I believe you have until, I think the date is May the 29th. There's some time, it'll be always listed Eastern, drives me crazy, Central Time Zone, the best time zone, but it'll be 5 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Eastern, something on the 29th of May that you have to have your name either in the draft or out, and maintain your college eligibility, which a lot of these combine folks at the NBA Combine, which is going on right now, they will do that. There's 58 picks in the NBA draft. And honestly, it's the first round that you want to be in. And everything else is a crapshoot. It's a total gamble. And if you are coming away from the combine, or the feedback you're getting is late first round, early second round, you're rolling the dice, and maybe you're getting, and so a lot of those will go, you know what, with NIL being what it is, they may say, I'm not going to chance it. I'll go take the bird in the hand. I mean, let's play this out locally. Are you telling me that a few years ago, and I'd give you two examples in the last, I guess it would be the last like 5 to 6 years, where if NIL would have been around at this time, you would have had an unbelievable sophomore coming back to play for you. Okay. Cause I think you would have made it happen. Zaire Smith. Okay. And Jamias Ramsey, they would have come back if you would have made it, the collective or somebody would have made it worth their while. And both, in Zaire's case, he was a first rounder and all that, and he got a big chunk. He got like $12 million. So maybe necessarily that's not a given, but you look at it and he kind of got phased out, some injuries and some different things. He's trying to still maintain it. Jamias, though, he's kind of G Leaguing it and doing some different things, and he wasn't exactly like the biggest fan of school. He wanted to hoop. All respect, to Jay Ramsey there, because he was really good. He went up to Allen Fieldhouse and lit them up like nobody had ever seen. And that's probably the one game where NBA folks were like, oh, yeah, he can do it at this level. But it's very hard. NIL wasn't available. You couldn't bring him back. A lot of these NBA guys are going to go, man, I'd rather go stay in college. And all that. And that's when you could maybe Grant McCaslin and company could be there to go put their arm around somebody and go, we got a spot for you. Yeah.
Now, that's one thing I considered as a fan coming into this era, and I really thought about it more from a basketball standpoint than a football standpoint. Could this actually translate into keeping better players in the college game for longer? And maybe the results are still somewhat mixed on that. I don't think the verdict is necessarily in, but those are some great examples as to a couple of guys that you may have been able to keep on campus a little longer. I was, back to the $2 million was looking yesterday into some of NBA draft slots. And I think what I saw most recently for the final pick in the first round was like, 2 million, 10,000, something like that. I mean, it was right in that kind of range. And obviously, like you're talking about, when you get beyond the first round and you're really rolling the dice, numbers are numbers. And when you're talking also about the thought that, hey, I'm playing in a premier, basketball conference, whether it's the Big 12 or something else, versus, minor league basketball, so to speak, or G League or whatever, obviously that'd be a much different experience as well. I was kind of curious, just in your what feels like a short amount of time, although I guess it hadn't been all that short, within this NIL era. Is this the biggest price tag, whether it's one landed or asked, that you've heard of? And where has a Texas Tech kind of ceiling been that you recall for an individual player? Has there been someone topping $1 million? And you don't have to publicly disclose who that was if that was the case. But I was curious if anybody had even gotten past the million point here in the 806. I was curious if anybody had even gotten past the million point here in the 806.
I would be completely unaware of a Red Raider NIL, getting more than that or around that figure. I think that personally, I don't think that is. I think that would take a unique, like if Pat Mahomes was here and you felt like you could bring him back and all that, there's probably some exceptions to said rule. I just don't know if that's Texas Tech's best usage of funds. or the Matador Club's best usage of funds, or and now if it's some private business and they just are like, I really like the kid, or I think he's very marketable, then by all means, that's what it's there for. But if you're talking about a budget and you're talking about the best way to spend it, I just don't think, regardless of sport, unless it's a very unique exception, I don't think that it's Texas Tech's in their best interest to allocate that much money to one player, regardless of sport.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a pitcher. I'm sure there's a quarterback, or a basketball version of this that that would be exceptions. But generally speaking, you get what I'm saying. Yeah. I think that there's Matt Rule, the Nebraska head coach, a guy that used to work with Joey, he was very outspoken, saying, "Hey man, some of these quarterbacks out there are getting $3 million. If you want a really good quarterback with Power 5 experience and all that, it's going to cost you $3 million." I mean, accurate, not accurate, I don't know. He said it, and I think that some of those high-profile QBs did move around a bit back in the last portion of the portal window, like in December. So those when a lot of those comments were made when a lot of those guys were in the portal. I mean, like Tyler Shuck's time frame, and all that stuff. Yeah. So, but I would be unaware of anybody as it relates to Texas Tech getting anywhere near that big of a price tag. But again, a lot of it is quiet on purpose. A lot of what they put pen to paper on is supposed to be kept private for their own good. For word does get out. I think other programs are aware of. It's funny because I had a vague idea of what some of your guys were making a couple of years ago, and I had two broadcasters on two different road trips come up to me like, "Man, so this guy's getting this guy's getting this," and I'm like, "How in the world do you know that?" And they're like, "Our coaches told us." I'm like, "Well, okay," and like I neither confirm or deny. But it was pretty much right on to what I had heard. So I'm going to assume that was, close to what was going on there. But it's just kind of interesting right now. But the $2 million thing for Great Osibor was just not something. But that's Washington's deal. And Louisville ends up, sitting there going, "We're willing to spend $2 million on you, and we lost you. Like, what kind of world are we living in?" But back to the drawing board for the Red Raiders is you still need a forward. You need somebody that can rebound and score and fill up your 4 and 5 man minutes, and you may have to wait a bit as the NBA Combine goes along. We can explain that a bit more if you want.
Yeah, that's just wild to think about. The losing, or one of the losing bidders also was going thumbs up to $2 million, and you still lose him, and you lose him to a guy named Sprinkle. I mean, that just can't sit well with you at the end of the day, but. I know we touched on this a little bit yesterday, but I am still obviously very curious about what next steps are there for Texas Tech, and a timetable for some action on a Red Raider front, because it kind of seems like, you may be twiddling your thumbs for a little bit. Not the program, but us as fans, kind of waiting for some news to come across the bow.
I don't know if this is a New York thing or an LA thing or maybe both, but you mentioned the word Sprinkle. I think there's like a cupcake establishment called Sprinkles. They have like vending machines in some of these big these big cities where you like roll up and there's nobody there, but you put your money in or card in, and like you get one of these fancy cupcakes just out of this kiosk. I don't know. It's like a giant pink box on the side of a street. Fascinating.
Sidewalk cupcake. Okay,
that's right. And they're like, they're not like your ding dongs or your Hostess ones with the little curly Q things on the top. We're talking a legit cupcake with a mountain of goodness on top, or whatever they're doing. Like the real foo-fooey deal.
Some people thought we might have flying cars by now. Instead, we've got the sidewalk cupcake vending machine.
Yeah.
Why are we getting fatter as a nation?
That's right. That's right.
Another conversation for another day.
Your timetable is that okay? So the combine is going on as we chat here in these days. There'll be some grading, there'll be some evaluations, there'll be some decision making, there'll be some heart to hearts with a lot of these guys. I believe the date is on the 29th of May. And at that point, there'll be a handful of players that say, "Man, I'm just not willing to chance it. I think I can go get $2 million out there in the portal world, or whatever it may be, and I'm going to go back to college because that's a pretty good gig if you can get it." I would agree. Again, Wizard of Oz on loop. I'm in. So there's going to be 3 to 4 guys at least that I would say check the boxes of what you're looking for, whether you can get mutual interest there, whether you can afford them, whether you can, who knows? I mean, I'll figure out what the obstacles would be. There's also like the G League Combine, which is kind of separate. I don't know the timetable there, but similar premise in that there's a lot of high schoolers that maybe were thinking, I'm just going to skip this deal, go to the G League and do all those things, and or European types. And so again, it may take a bit for this to cycle out, but you'll end up with somebody. And I think that what Grant McCaslin's message has always been, find a way to trust us. We know what we're doing. He said this repeatedly all last summer when there was a lot of criticism, a lot of gnashing of teeth, a lot of concern, a lot of worry, a lot of, I just don't know if we're going to be relevant anymore. Are we going to play this plotting style, whatever? You trust in the man. The man earned that this past year with a depleted roster and thin roster at times, and they finished 4th in the Big 12. They earned a bye in the tournament. They got, a bye in the Big 12 tournament. They got to the NCAAs, and yeah, it wasn't perfect, and he wants to improve upon that. But you got a long way to go here. So again, go back to what he always says: find a way, trust us. We know what we're doing, and this just may take a few weeks to a month to 6 weeks to kind of figure out how you're going to finish out this roster, but they'll end up with something substantial, in my opinion.
Well, and just in a kind of big picture perspective from a fan standpoint, you hear so much weeping and gnashing of teeth as it relates to the NIL stuff, but if I'm not mistaken, NCAA tournament numbers still up in this most recent iteration, and this one featured athletes that were competing in commercials during the commercial breaks and things like that. And I don't really know if that's, actually impacting what we're doing as fans as far as being put off by it. That may just be a tiny, tiny percentage, and they may still be watching somewhere in a dark room, sucking their thumb, mad the whole time, but they still got it on the television. But yeah, this was, I think, a significant week, and maybe it doesn't have any type of wide-ranging ramifications, but maybe it does. I guess only time will tell.
Yeah, it's a great point. It was this news about Great Osobor out there. Does that, set some sort of market? Is that is this a one-off? Is this it was, I think, eye-opening for a lot of people. One, that it was just reported as widely as it was nationally, and two, the figure attached to it. I think that, but as it relates to Texas Tech, and I want to go back to, this is why I think you haven't really seen an announcement with JT Toppen, because you could have a commitment or an agreement or whatever with any of these dudes in this NBA Combine, okay? And then all of a sudden you could go, wait, you're going to the draft? No, so that's why it's a bit tenuous and tricky.
Yeah.
It's going to be best to let that part cycle through. And now I know, okay, now you can't hold this over me, or you can't, I know what you're doing. You had to declare you're coming back to college. You are, or you're out. So that's also the tricky part about this 2 to 3 week period here leading up to that deadline, is that, even though somebody's committed to a college, man, they may not be going to that college. They may be, staying in the draft and like, man, I played really good up here and at the combine, and I'm good, man. Good luck to you. See ya,
The days of going in the living room and just promising mama you're going to take care of their baby boy seems so antiquated. So this is a wild, wild courtship that we're talking about now, not only when it comes to college basketball, but of course, college sports recruiting in general. And we're happy to be walking the high wire here with you today on Locked On Texas Tech. So appreciate you all being out there. Chris, appreciate your time as always.
Yeah, walking the high wire, and then some guy goes into the bathroom like Kramer and passes a kidney stone, and you fall off. And yeah, hey, the comedian, yeah.
That was $2 million that you heard from the restroom that was shaking the wire like the Ultimate Warrior.
That's right. There you go. Yeah. Okay. All right, man. Enjoyed it today. I'm sorry for derailing this many a time, but anyway. Enjoy the day, people. We'll talk to you tomorrow, and we'll see what NIL and portal and all kinds of things bring our way. We shall see.
Appreciate you being out there. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts if you're not already, so you don't miss a thing. Steven Tyler would do it. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.